Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 7 short stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to every major podcasting platform, and you can also read along on YouTube under the @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to the stories, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from SNJXX. New manager putting productivity over everything. I worked at a call center of nurses to give advice on whether the caller needed to go to the ER, GP, manage symptoms at home, etc. As it's health advice, it's crucial to document everything, because if someone was, for example, instructed to stay at home while exhibiting clear stroke symptoms, we'd be responsible. Well, a new manager was hired above our own floor manager to increase productivity, as the number of calls increased rapidly at the beginning of COVID. She felt it was necessary to reduce the time we spent on documenting after the call had ended. In addition to medical records, we had to fill out a short questionnaire about each call to monitor the reasons people call us. Internal purposes, not really my expertise. So it obviously took a while. Average time I think was around 3 minutes after each call. The new manager informed us that 90 seconds was going to be enough, and she had asked the IT department to make the program push us a new call after those 90 seconds, whether we were ready or not. The call would ring loudly, first on headphones, and after 10 seconds on the computer sound system. New patient information screen popped up, everything unfinished was pushed to the back, and we had to either decline the call, only allowed in emergencies, or let it ring and try to work over the ringing, which could not be muted. It was horrible, the noise was unbearable, and just in a few hours, we workers complained so much that the new manager just told us to take the new call and finish up the old one while talking to the new patient. Cue Malicious Compliance. Patient information law, similar to HIPAA in the US, violations, here we come. Having 2 patients' info up at the same time, trying to figure out why the latter called, and wrapping up on the previous one, how many documentations were written on the wrong patient's records. We tried. It was even worse than before. It took us about an hour to realize it would never work, and so we took the new call, asked them to wait for a second, muted the call, and finished up the previous one. The customers were not happy, but us workers gladly directed them to avenues to give feedback through. The company got so many bad reviews and online complaints in the first 6 hours that they had to regroup and stay late on that Monday evening to undo everything. We went back to normal on Tuesday, 2 hours later than we should have opened due to reprogramming. The new manager was with us less than 3 months. Don't miss her a bit. I had the most chaotic, headache-inducing 8.5 hours of my life that day. Still have nightmares of that ringtone. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called PageFault. It says, "This is a huge problem in medicine right now. My wife is a doctor, and they keep pushing more and more patients on her. She works at a clinic and is off by 5 p.m., but she was working until 9:30 p.m. last night, trying to keep up with notes and documentation about patients she saw that day. Management does not care about patient health. They want as many patients as possible to come through. If you start making mistakes, it's not on them, it's on you, and they don't care. Side note, wife just quit her job over it a few days ago. I am encouraging her to start her own practice." OP responded to this one and said, "I'm glad she quit. I'm also working somewhere where quality of care is put over quantity, charity-based organization. I was so worried I'd make a mistake while rushing through the calls. It's hard to assess people without seeing them. You have to trust what they tell you and record everything they describe experiencing to prove your assessment." Ah yes, this is totally effective management. Let's overwork everybody who's in here by making them take multiple calls when they're not even done the previous ones. Yeah, that's gonna do nothing to their stress levels. They're gonna be great, our numbers are gonna go up. Just watch, it'll happen. Does anybody else smell that? This story comes to us from Illustrious Log 3261. "Boss, I don't need your input, just do what I say." So my wife is having some issues at her work with multiple people of different levels of management telling her different things to do, depending on who's the manager on duty at the moment. I said she should do what the acting manager told her to do, and when another manager comes on duty complaining about what she was doing, to relay what the previous manager had told her, and to let them work it out. I also said that she should document everything so that she could relate it to HR if it became necessary to do so. I then explained to her about malicious compliance and what it meant. This started me thinking about an incident at my old job at a manufacturing plant about 12 years ago. The building had two areas, a production and packaging area and an attached shipping and receiving warehouse. The production area was air conditioned and heated. The warehouse was heated but only had roof exhaust fans and no AC. So it got pretty hot in the summer, but was bearable. We just moved slower. On end of Friday, we closed all the dock doors and shut off the exhaust fans and closed the overhead door that separated the warehouse from the production areas. During the week, the overhead was open, but had those plastic flap strips you could drive a forklift through to keep the air cool in production. One Friday, the newish manager, who spent little actual time in that building, told us that we should keep the fans on and the separation overhead door open during the weekend to keep the temperature cooler in the warehouse. Why he cared, I really can't fathom. We tried to explain to him that with the dock doors closed, the roof fans would simply suck all of the cold air out of the production area. But he blew us off with the standard, "You will do as I instruct you to do." So, cue malicious compliance. Monday comes, that morning in July, and it was hot as hell in the production area. The warehouse was the same temperature as always, and the coils on the production AC units had frozen, and we had to have people come out and service them. All the manager had to say was, "Keep that separation overhead door closed at all times." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Grimes407. It says, "I mean, it was kinda silly and short-sighted of your boss, but it kind of sounds like he was just trying to make the warehouse cooler." A commenter below that called Call Nick said, "This is why the newish manager should open his ears and listen before spewing instructions. They don't want to be hot, and they tried to tell him, but he responded by pulling rank. Stupid." This manager sounds exactly like my old boss Rick, and you guys know how much I love him. Rick the Dick, who was the only person allowed to actually think in the store. If you had anything to say that went against what he said, you'd be pulled into the office and told, "I'm the manager, you do what I say." Screw you, Rick. Also for this one, did anybody else think that this malicious compliance was going to be a story about his wife? I mean, that whole first paragraph was about as useless as the first 3 minutes of The Simpsons. This story comes to us from Cryptographer Medical. I feel the need for speed. Many years ago, I worked on checkouts at a major supermarket. I loved it, chat with customers, flirt with old ladies, make them smile. I used to get positive customer comment cards every 7 to 10 days, which was the highest rate in the whole store. Some customers used to queue at my checkout on purpose. One manager and I never really got on. She was a really miserable, bitter old woman. She gave me a severe telling off as I was scanning stuff too slow. I asked if customers had complained. No complaints. I explained that I scanned at the speed for the customer. She threatened me with a verbal warning if I didn't get my scanning speed up. I wasn't slowest, but I was in bottom third for speed. Normally, I'd have said go on, but I wanted to go on management training. So I decided malicious compliance and went as fast as I could for the rest of the shift and most of next shift. So fast, my hands and wrists ached. 3 complaints that I was going too fast. Told to go back to what I was doing before. I can understand the company wanting to be more efficient and get customers through quickly, but you can't let that go at the expense of customer service. I've been in grocery stores before where they're trying to get you through really quickly. You pay, you're still trying to get your stuff into bags, and they're throwing down the next customer's things, hitting yours back behind. You have to figure out whose is whose. It's just a pain in the ass. This story comes to us from Classic Ad 6001. Haven't done the dishes in weeks. I'm not sure if this falls under malicious compliance or petty revenge or a combo of both, to be honest. But anyway, I'm a college student with roommates who love to use my stuff, even though we had a roommate agreement, and I basically said, ask first if you'd like to use my stuff. That lasted a week, because apparently they think if I let them use my stuff once, it gives them permission to do it all the time. I noticed one roommate in particular had taken a liking to my frying pan and mugs. Specifically, these are 4 identical glass mugs. One day, I was doing the dishes and was in a rush to get somewhere and noticed there were 2 of my mugs in the sink. I went to the girl and said something along the lines of, "Hey, if you're going to use my mugs, please clean them." Then she said okay. I left both in the sink after doing the dishes I used. I come back after a weekend at home to find those 2 mugs still in there with coffee from 3 days earlier marinating in there, and another one of my cups in there. I talked to her multiple other times in the following weeks about how if she plans on using my stuff, she shall clean it. Once I realized this stuff was not being cleaned, I decided, well, if people don't want to clean my stuff that they use, why on earth should I clean my stuff that I use? So I stopped doing my dishes. Funnily enough, 3 days later, this girl nagged me about doing the dishes. So I said, then do yours. And she said that there were none of her things in the sink. I responded with the fact that all 4 of the mugs she has used are in there, and my pan. She said, those are your dishes. Her logic is basically if she doesn't own it, she can use it without cleaning it. So I started not only leaving my dishes in the sink, but using hers. Anyway, I haven't done the dishes in 3 weeks. If it bothers her so much, she would clean her stuff that I used, but apparently according to her, I have to clean them because I used it. Hypocrites are so funny to mess with. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Global Dude. It says, clean your stuff, remove it, and then start using her stuff without cleaning it. OP responded to this one and said, will do. OP, that is probably the best solution. I would clean your stuff and then lock it up somewhere, only bringing it out if you absolutely have to use it. And then randomly, not every time, but randomly use your roommate's stuff every once in a while and just leave it in the sink, just to see what happens. This story comes to us from Zealous Ideal Ad 7045. Paint? Okay. Have a small house in an HOA community. Most of the rules are basic and hardly enforced. However, we got a butthole self-appointed president who did things his way. We eventually got a lawyer involved and got him out. However, one time he started saying we needed approval for everything, which was incorrect. He even said if we paint our house, we need approval. So had the house pressure washed, which left paint flaking on the foundation. He sent me a letter, so I painted it black. He sends another letter, not an approved color, looked at bylaws, and there was no mention of color. So I left it black, painted the door lime green, and shutters pink. He sends another letter. My lawyer sent a letter. After the butthole president was ousted, I painted my house back to nicer colors. My friends helped me both times, so other than a case of beer and a few gallons of paint, I wasn't out anything. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called I Want That Boat. It says, I like that you painted it back to normal colors so that whenever he drives by, it's blatantly obvious that you only effed with the colors to piss him off. There's not a whole lot to say to wrap this one up, just that I would never, ever buy a house in an HOA. After all the stories we've read here about them, they sound absolutely horrible. If you're listening on YouTube rather than on the podcast, comment down below and tell me your HOA story. This story comes to us from Sweet Secretary 2221, minor malicious compliance that felt really satisfying. I, 17 female, am a very outgoing person. I'm super extroverted and jolly around others. Whenever I meet someone, I'll greet them with a big hug and a smile on my face. To be honest, most people are really happy when I hug them, and that makes me want to do it even more, if that makes sense. A few weeks ago, a friend of mine, let's call her Tam, saw me hug a mutual friend. she immediately said, "You greet people as if they're your long-lost lovers. God, that's so cringe." I've been told it's cringe in the past, but the long-lost lovers thing was new, so I decided to do a little bit of mischief. When I showed up to class the next day, I hugged every one of my friends except Tam. When I'd hugged everyone, I walked over to Tam and I just shook her hand real slow, making eye contact the whole time. The awkwardness was palpable. This was 3 weeks ago, and now Tam nearly begs me to hug her because the handshake is somehow awkward. I just say, "Nah, you said it was cringe." I don't know whether it counts as malicious compliance, but gosh darn, I love the look on her face when I shake her hand. OP added a quick edit at the bottom. It says, "Edit, no, I don't go around hugging strangers. I don't hug people that have told me they don't like physical contact. No, I don't hug random men. My academy is an all-girls one, so no strange guys whatsoever." Wait a minute, was this malicious compliance or was this wholesome compliance? I think the only really cringe thing about this whole story was OP's supposed friend being crappy to OP for being their authentic self. OP, you're an individual and you embrace your individuality. You rock. This story comes to us from Lady Nutbar. I cut lettuce how they wanted. I work somewhere that sells pizza. At my store, we do not get the veggies pre-cut. We cut them by hand, minus the mushrooms and black olives. This includes lettuce, tomatoes, green peppers, and onions. A customer ordered taco pizza. It is topped with cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, and chip crumbles. He called in after getting home to yell at an employee about the size of the cut lettuce. Then he came in and threw an absolute tantrum over the lettuce. Like full-on meltdown, cussing at the employees, yelling at other guests who were telling him to calm the F down. Well, last night he ordered again. In all caps in the notes he ordered online, he wrote, "Cut the effing lettuce smaller." Alright, bet. Cue malicious compliance. I took the measured amount of lettuce out and minced the F out of it. It was basically lettuce confetti when I was done. Topped his pizza. He checked it before he left and said, "Are you effing serious? This is ridiculous. I'm not paying for this, and I'm never coming back again. You people are effing stupid. I'm calling corporate." To begin with, it was like 1x2, so not even that big at all. Literally no one else ever has complained. And the order description says chopped lettuce, not shredded, so we're cutting it to spec anyway. One of our teenage employees quipped to me that if he thinks the lettuce is so big, they feel sorry for his wife. All I have to say on this one is that when a customer says they're fed up and they're never coming back, you just want to look at them and say, "Oh my gosh, sometimes the trash takes itself out." If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to the favorites on whatever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. Also, if you're listening on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.